Good to see you here today. This is Ayobami Ilori and myself, Liliana Harding from the University of East Anglia, and we will show you how we have assessed in an authentic mode the International Trade and Integration module in 2020-2021. Essentially, we will look into one piece of assessment which engaged students throughout the term and has seen them as well work both in groups as well as having a discussion forum which was ongoing throughout the term. Just to give you a brief flavor on that one, I will just show a little bit on my screen how everything looked like at the time. So here is how the model has been set up, and as a summative assessment, we had essentially a portfolio where students had to submit a video as a group. So this can be set up nicely within your Blackboard facilities, and you can create as well nice rubrics for assessment. We were making sure that we had criteria which were looking into what makes a good presentation, but also what makes good collaborative work. And subsequent to having group work, students were discussing as well with each other throughout the term the presentations which have been also uploaded on the discussion boards. Here, everybody could join in throughout the semester, and we will look back a bit later on how that has been working. Ayo, just to you now, maybe you tell us a little bit about how this sits into the general assessment structure.
The assessment is actually quite interesting because, first of all, we asked the student to work in groups to produce a video relating to what they have learned in the previous weeks. For instance, in the first 2 weeks, we learn about the theory of international trade and how that came into existence and their applications. And then we give these students another extra 2 weeks, specifically 10 days, to work together to produce a video to summarize what they have learned and how they could apply this policy in reality. After that, the students submit this online, and then they engage with one another for another 1 week based on the video that have been produced by one of the teams in the group. In total, we have 16 groups, and 2 of these groups produce a video each week. So overall, we have this assessment over the period of 8 weeks, specifically week 4 to week 11.
I actually was wondering what you think worked best in this structure from your point of view, and what we can carry forward in a blended learning environment.
Particularly, I think what worked best in the assessment, particularly for me, is the way students learn, both from themselves and from other outside material, outside their own learning. This is particularly interesting because this is the first time students are being assessed while they are actively participating remotely from their home. The particular interest we have in this particular work is to see students engaging with one another in order to ensure that they do not miss that feel of face-to-face learning they often have before the 2020 academic year. And that is exactly what motivated this particular assessment. So what do I think worked best? The ability of my students to apply what they have learned in the class and to bring out their own initiative in order to be able to explain this theory in a layman language, which is one of the prerequisites of this particular assessment.
Of course, we could show you exactly what the assessment was about, but I think what was most relevant for me and what I did enjoy most was the ongoing engagement of students. I would like to highlight that apart from the video, we were monitoring as well the number and the quality of contribution over the semester as a whole. So Ayo and I were monitoring the discussion on a weekly basis. Students were putting questions to each other, so they were expected to put questions to those who have submitted the video presentation, give as well comments, add research, or have any kind of other related discussion in the forum. While they had to contribute on a weekly basis, we were saying that 5 contributions or 5 weekly contributions out of 8 are essential in order to get the full grade for the group. In other words, it was a pass-fail component where students had to engage at least 5 weekly topics in order to get their full marks. That in itself was also allowed for by the system because it does monitor actually within Blackboard the number of contributions on a weekly basis, while we as tutors were monitoring the quality of the contributions. But enough with all this sort of praise. What were the challenges from your point of view, Ayo?
I think the first challenge I noticed about this particular assessment is the fact that we have a kind of poor internet network for many of our students who particularly reside outside the UK. The issue about technology is beyond any student or even academics, and you often find some students or even a group lagging behind their own deadline to submit their own video. And another challenge we also noticed is about non-cooperation about some students who feel maybe they have been sidelined by other members in their own group. So one way we try to address this is to reach out to these groups and to understand what the issue is and to help them to harmonize their thoughts so that they can come together and produce something tangible.
That's great sort of as an advice for people to keep in mind. And also the fact that people were stranded around the world, sometimes the connections were not equally good. So it was a question of adjusting as well the assessment for those. It was also a question of training the other students to understand the challenges of their peers, because sometimes it was not possible maybe to do a video recording, or essentially there were the time differences or anything else that stays in between in the students' total performance. But altogether, I think that proof to everybody's ability to contribute was actually the ability to also asynchronously be part of the discussion boards. Certainly another challenge which I would highlight and probably people would expect is teamwork itself. Students need to understand the reason why teamwork is useful. And in our particular setting here, they had to understand that they are actually accountable to the team as well as to the final assessment, because half of the marks were coming actually from their engagement with the discussion boards. Had they not done so in any meaningful way, their mark might have been halved. So that itself might be a challenge to explain to students why they get only half the marks, which people do need to think about when designing similar type of coursework. Is there anything else which you would like to add now in order to bring this forward?
Of course, well, I would like to talk about the assessment and monitoring. One of the things I like particularly about this particular assessment is the fact that we are able to evaluate what we are doing on the spot in order to see what works and how students engage with this so that we can feed it back into the process even before the end of the assessment. So, for instance, after the first 2 submissions, we understand that the students were engaging quite well, but not as much. So we bring in more initiative to get students to be involved and to get them to talk to one another and to see what is happening. I also remember that at the middle of the assessment, when we are already in week 5 of the video, I reached out to some of the students who are not having good engagement enough, and they were able to contribute. Whereas if it had been that it is a final exam or something, this would not be there. So this student will be lagging behind and we won't be able to monitor them as much as we were able to do that during this particular assessment. Another important thing is that the Blackboard is a very essential tool in this particular assessment, and it helps us to be able to track each of the students' contribution and engagement throughout the particular throughout this semester. At the end of the day, we are able to ensure that each of the students is carried along in this particular assessment process such that everybody have a good feel of the assessment.
Thanks a lot, Ayo. I think that's pretty much all time we have. But just to finish off, I want to share once again our wonderful discussion board thread and just show people the number of contributions we did have from students over some of the weeks. This is students' engagement, which was ongoing. In the cohort itself were just about 80 students. So some of them were engaging more than once with the discussions. There were meaningful contributions as well. And ultimately, they were also feeding into a final report where where they were reflecting what they learned from each other and on the different topics. Well, that's it from me this time around. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.